Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Real Estate America's Newsroom. It is the day after the 4th of July, Independence Day celebration. It's the day after. Congratulations, we made it. We've got a whole nother week. We've got a whole bunch of awesome things to talk about, and you should go ahead and stick around. Today, we're going to talk about, yes, today is that day after the 4th of July, and everybody's stumbling into work and saying, you know what, I wish I had an extra day. However, we're going to talk about what the market is doing right now. We have a fresh off the hot news report from Daryl Cronk, Wells Fargo CIO, and Jurian Timber from Fidelity Investments, talking about how the market is giving back all of its gains from Friday before the weekend. Austin, Phoenix, and Raleigh inventory now up over 100%. Interesting. We're going to check in with some of the fellas and talk about that. Stocks could drop 50%, argues American economist Nouriel Roubini. Who is Nouriel Roubini? We've got a Market Watch report. And as always, we're going to tap in with mortgage and appraiser news with Captain Kirk Jaffe and Mr. Mark Buhler, America's favorite appraiser. And Jeff Bezos, ladies and gentlemen, contends with President Biden on Twitter after Biden blames gas stations for high prices. But before we get moving forward, I'm going to introduce today's co-host, which is Mr. Kirk Jaffe. Kirk, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, good morning, Jake. How are you?
Wonderful. You look like you're in a nice area. Where are you at these days?
Yeah, we're up in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, enjoying some clean air and some fresh water, and I just love it up here.
Yeah, Lake Tahoe is absolutely beautiful. I'm slightly jealous. That sounds fantastic in every way. How was your 4th of July celebration, sir?
Yeah, I think I hit all the check boxes. We grilled out and saw some fireworks and enjoyed some family, and it was great. It's great. How about yours, Jake?
It was a long weekend full of surprises and all good things, but we definitely went ahead and celebrated the beautiful independence of this country. That's for sure. That's for sure. We have a lot to talk about today. It looks like the stock market is giving back all of its gains that it gave on Friday.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? We're watching these markets daily. I can only imagine some of these executives in these large companies are pulling their hair out right now, trying to figure out next moves.
Yeah, we've got, it's interesting to go ahead and listen in to Daryl Cronk, who is Wells Fargo's CIO, kind of talk about the bond market a little bit. I've got a special clip to show everybody. We'll get into that. So inventory, we've talked about some of these different hot markets, right, over the last 2-3 months, and how inventory's been low and appreciation's been double digits or more, right? Now all of a sudden, since the mortgage rates have gone up, looks like inventory is struggling to keep up with, or is actually starting to present itself with these high prices.
Yeah, I think the pendulum's starting to swing the other way. But as we'll discover in the show, and we go through some of the numbers, we'll find out that, up 100% from what? From such low inventory that there were like 3 houses for sale, and now there's 6. So I think we got a little ways to go still, but it is good to see things start to balance out a little bit. I think it's going to be good for the economy in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. Stocks could drop 50%, argues American economist Nouriel Roubini. Nouriel is typically a doomsday type economist. However, it's quite interesting to hear some of his analysis on the 1970s crash, 2008 crash, and how he thinks this might be a combination.
Yeah, where's Nostradamus in all of this? Didn't he make all the predictions like that?
We'll bring him in on the next couple shows, right? Go ahead and see what's going on. So, but ladies and gentlemen, stick around to the very end. You're not going to want to miss this. It looks like Jeff Bezos is contending with President Biden on Twitter regarding our high gas prices. Looks like the president is blaming the gas station attendants and the gas stations themselves for the high prices. So we're going to figure out what's going on there. But before we get moving forward, Kirk, why should people even watch this show?
If you're a real estate agent, you're trying to stay ahead of the markets, you want to get great insight and advice on how to sidestep any challenges, how to deal with, clients, buyers, and sellers. And also, if you're a consumer and you want to know what's really going on, that's what we do. We cover the news, and so much of the headlines is sensational. So if you want to get the real facts, this is a good place to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we stream every Tuesday and Thursday at high noon Eastern, 0900 Pacific hours. You can check us out at reunation.com. reunation.com. Over there, check out the Real Estate America's newsroom for all of our past shows. If you enter your information, you get all the show notes that we're reviewing and putting in front of you. Also, if you guys ever want to be on the show or have any hot insider news, please enter your information, and one of our associates will reach out and get in touch with you. Good deal. All right, well, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't just go right into the news without showing a little bit of a grand finale. This was from this was from Michigan, Grand Forks, Michigan. So Grand Rapids, Michigan, I'm sorry. What a beautiful display. What a beautiful display. All over the world was a beautiful display of fireworks. What a wonderful holiday, the independence of our great country. It was amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, go ahead and post some of your pictures or videos in the comments and notes below. We'd love to see some pictures from your Independence Day celebration. That'd be awesome. All right, so today's the day after, gentlemen. What is the financial markets doing? What are we doing at work? Everybody's kind of a little bit sleepy from being up late last night, but let's go ahead and check in to see what our money's doing. This is hot off the press, ladies and gentlemen.
Guys, it's great to see you both. Daryl, I think we spoke last time about various metrics that suggest recession when bonds and stocks do equally poorly for a couple quarters in a row. I don't think, it sounds like you don't think Atlanta Fed is a lie.
No, I actually don't think it is, Carl. In fact, it's continued to deteriorate here, and we're still going to get June numbers out in July that'll probably deteriorate further. So you're likely, to Sarah's good point earlier, to put a technical recession in place, which means the negative 1.6% in Q1, and then probably something north of a negative 2% in Q2 is what it's looking like right now. Turn the page. What's interesting, Carl, is none of the indicators on the market are suggesting good things, and I think the real story today is probably in the bond market more so than the stock market. The 2 to 10 spread is 1 basis point away from inverting here this morning. People haven't paid attention, but high yield spreads have gone up 50% in the last 30 days. So they've gone from 400 over to more or less 60 or 600 basis points over, and widened about 70 basis points in the last week. So the bond market is telling you more things than the stock market is right now.
That's a great point, Urian. Some of the bulls argue that financial indicators overstate recession risk, but I wonder if you think actual macro indicators are starting to ratify it.
Well, they are starting to. I mean, we're clearly in a deep late cycle mode. The fiscal stimulus from 2020 and 21 has turned into a fiscal drag. We know that inflation is sort of cutting into disposable income. We're obviously all waiting with bated breath for second quarter earnings season, and I think it looks like from the tape in front of us that investors are selling first and asking questions later, because the market's fairly valued at 16 times forward earnings, but that's only as good as the forward earnings, of course. And so the earnings side, I think, really is the next big thing. But as you just pointed out, high yield is really the canary in the coal mine right now, because the cost of capital is starting to fall across the board as the worries transition from inflation to growth. And so treasury yields, mortgage rates, everything is starting to come down, except for the yield on the Barclays High Yield Index. That one is rising, and that clearly, is a divergence that certainly me as a chartist is looking very carefully at.
I guess, Daryl, to a lot of the negativity that you spelled out earlier on the economy and what's happening with bonds, my question is, why isn't that bullish? We didn't like high inflation. We didn't like high bond yields. We didn't like high oil prices. That's all coming down now because the Fed is doing what it's supposed to do. And so if we don't have an inflation problem, sure, recession's not good, but bond yields moving south at some point, isn't that bullish?
Well, it's a great point, Sarah. It depends on why bond yields are moving south, right? If the curve on the long, intermediate long side is coming down because of concerns of pulling out any kind of a growth premium, right, which I think is what's happening here lately, that's suggesting, recession is more imminent. Don't forget, to the points made earlier, we're the most aggressive central bank on the planet. The ECB hasn't even started tightening conditions in a 8+% inflation world. The BOJ is still holding firm on yield control, and China is the most dovish central bank or large central bank on the planet. So we have a lot of work to do yet on inflation, and I think the bond market is starting to tell you that. Relative to earnings season, you're probably going to get 11-12% revenue growth, but only about 5 to 6% earnings growth, which tells you already this will be the first quarter of margin deterioration because of the math just in the income statement there. And I think we need to really watch forward consensus, because I think post the Q2 conference calls with CEOs and CFOs, those sell side numbers are going to get ratcheted down pretty materially.
We see Tesla on the board there on that stock ticker. Tesla is obviously tightening up and being more conservative regarding their hiring policies. We know that Facebook or Meta is doing the same thing just over the last handful of days. Mark Zuckerberg gave a big report talking to his tens of thousands of employees in the same regard. So, gentlemen, we talk a lot about consumer confidence being such a big contributor on housing, on the financial marketplaces, right? And we've seen a tremendous amount of new people go ahead and enter into the stock market during the lockdowns, pandemic, things like that. So there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of people that were trading stocks like they were at the casino, right? Trying to go ahead and do some things and try to learn what it was. A lot of liquidity hit the marketplace. So consumer confidence, when we start seeing the mainstream media hitting and bumping all like this, people start pulling back, and that's a big contributor. But obviously, we've got some major players like Daryl Kronk, Wells Fargo CIO, really watching things close. Same with some big American economists, and we're starting to see some of these things. So, Mark, what say you on this whole matter?
Well, I don't think when we were talking about housing here that most people are in the business of day trading homes. We do see these fix and flip type people that have put the brakes on. The sentiment here in my area is one of uncertainty. Some people would say now's a great time to buy a house because next year it's going to cost you more money. And others are sitting there back saying, well, I'm just going to wait until the price drops. So we're starting to see, like in all markets, a lot of fear and uncertainty. But we are currently seeing a rise in inventory, like you mentioned, some of the other stories in some of the hot markets like Paul's in. That means less people are willing to jump into real estate. I'm not sure what they're jumping into, if they're just sitting back holding on to their pennies and trying to buy a gallon of gas and milk.
Paul, what's the consumer confidence like in your neck of the woods in North Carolina?
Well, I've always been a big believer in raw material investments. I don't have many stocks, and I really think if you're going to invest your money into something, it should be something that is raw material. That's just my personal opinion now. We are booming. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on the show. As our inventory's up, we're still going in strong. My family invested a lot of money before the first stock market crash, and we lost a lot of that. And that's why I have some stocks, like Cisco, for example, it just kind of just sits there and maybe goes up a little bit and down. Cisco Technology, but I've just never been into that. It's almost like we said, a casino. And I think if you got $30,000, go open up a food truck, man. All right, that's the way I see it. I mean, that's something that's there. Consumers will buy. They got $10. People got $10 to buy a sandwich, and so that's my personal opinion on that.
Kirk, the financial markets are deeply interwoven and connected to all things that we do in the housing side of the world. What say you on this?
Yeah, I hear some interesting things in that report. The yield curve has flipped again, and as we talked about on this show, and we've been watching the charts now for a while, when that yield curve flips between the 2-year and the 10-year note, you generally will start to see a recession after that. There are a few indicators we need to see also. We're watching very carefully the unemployment reports, which are ticking up, and we expect going into like next month with all the layoffs at the corporate levels that we've been talking about, Tesla and banking stocks and Quicken Loans, things like that, that we'll start to see that employment rate go up too. And, but housing during recessions does really well. So I expect going forward, those houses aren't going to get any cheaper. I don't know where rates will be, but probably when we start to see the Fed lower rates to, once inflation's under control, the mortgage rates will come down too.
Mark, I saw a report here just recently on MarketWatch. It was talking about how a lot of the investors, BlackRock, some of these bigger institutions are going to do their darndest to keep these housing prices elevated during some of these changes. What say you on that?
Well, if they can control the inventory, if they have that much of it, then they can absolutely do that. But I think the typical seller around here is starting to think that this might be the ceiling. And maybe if we're thinking about cashing in, this might be the time to do it. The signs here are pointing to demand staying about the same, but inventory starting to open up. And when we go back to basic economics, that's going to have some downward pressure on pricing, especially if the rates don't go down, as they mentioned in this report. That why isn't this a bullish report? And as Kirk said, real estate, and I think Paul alluded to it, these are tangible assets that are we can hold on to. They're going to appreciate, but I don't know that the big boys can control it. Because there is a lot of just your typical mom and pop that just think, man, maybe now's a good time to sell. The problem is, where do they go?
Yeah, there's still not relief on that side of the house. Kirk, go ahead.
Yeah, the institutions only own about 2% of the market. So, can they really control pricing? I'm with Mark, probably not. But I think consumers in general and homeowners in general do believe we're probably at a peak. And but buying and selling anything is about value and price, right? So if you own the property and you can get your cash out of it, that resonates with you and your family, this is a good time to do that. The inventory climbing is good. We need more stability in the markets. So I think that's expected and should be welcomed at this point.
So the Fed went ahead and their most recent raise was 0.75 basis points. And they're obviously doing that to curb inflation, which we're starting to see. So this is start of the trickle down of some of the changes that are happening. So a more balanced market could be the consensus here. Mark, so now's the time to buy and sell because things are going to go ahead and get more interesting moving forward. So say you.
Well, maybe Nouriel, Roubini, or Nostradamus could fill us in on that, whether it is the time to do that or not. But like Kirk said, that's a personal decision. If it works for your family and you can see opportunity in that, perhaps, and it always depends on who are you listening to. Might be a great time to sell. Who knows? But only time will tell.
Yeah, but families have different needs. I can only tell you, up here in Tahoe, we have a building here that needed a lot of deferred maintenance fixed up over. They haven't touched the building in 15, 18 years. And the second that the assessment went in from the homeowners association, 2 of the owners decided to sell. They'd rather cash out than hold on to the asset. So it's a lifestyle thing. And that's always going to be the case in the market. So it doesn't matter if real estate goes up or goes down. You want to be, as a real estate agent, you want to be in front of, other professionals, and you want to be in front of consumers so that you're ready when they are. They need to know who you are. Don't make yourself a secret.
So I think a big question is, where is the affordable housing, right, for the majority of the buyers if you are transitioning? Paul, what does affordable housing look like in North Carolina?
Well, a lot of people are selling and they're downsizing, and that is a plus because they're getting more for their current property, and then they're able to purchase a smaller property, even if it is at market value or higher, that the market's increase. So it's still possible. New construction is still going up. There's been a lot of new construction, people buying into new construction. And I believe there's going to be a change in that as well. I don't see it slowing down tremendously. And again, it's like what Kirk said, every realtor needs to be in front of professionals, and they need to be listening to their clients, why they need to change. And again, what is affordable housing? It's a good question, Jake. If you're a realtor and you're working with a client, you need to know what that is. And so does the lender. And why do they need a house? How much? What are the finances situations? And can they afford the house, or is it going to get repoed, right? They're going to put it back on the market. And we don't know what the market's going to be in 2 more years, and we don't know what the interest rates are going to be.
Understood. Well, let's go ahead and tap in and take a look at some of the inventory talking points out in the mainstream. This one is from Diane Olick on CNBC, and it's she's talking about how housing nationwide inventory jumps 19%. This is about a week and a half back, and then we have a recent report from Phoenix here over the weekend. So here's Diane Olick.
Welcome back, everybody. Housing supply is building, which sounds great, right? But unfortunately, prices are still at record highs. Diana Olick is here with the latest data and what it'll take, Diana, to bring affordability back to the market.
That's right, Kelly. That's the biggest question. Look, the number of active home listings jumped at the fastest annual pace on record in June, or at least since Realtor.com began tracking this 5 years ago. Up close to 19%, and new listings finally surpassed typical pre-COVID levels. Markets seeing the biggest gain in supply are some of the once hottest pandemic plays. Austin inventory up close to 145% year over year. Phoenix up 113%, and Raleigh up close to 112%. Markets still seeing a drop, though, in supply. Miami down 16%, Chicago down 13%, and Virginia Beach down 14%. Now, don't get too excited that all this new supply is helping with prices. The median listing price hit another record high in June of $450,000. The annual gains are moderating slightly, but they're still up almost 17%. Part of that is because the share of larger, more expensive homes is rising, and that skews the numbers slightly higher. As a result, of course, affordability in the second quarter of this year dropped in the vast majority of the nation. With higher prices and now much higher mortgage rates, the costs of owning the median-priced home in Q2 required 31.5% of the average U.S. wage. That's the highest since 2007 and up from just 24% the year before. That's also the biggest jump in more than 2 decades. Lenders generally see 28% as the ceiling for lending, and that's why some potential home buyers today are no longer qualifying for a mortgage, Kelly.
And I keep hearing horror stories about soaring rents.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing some of those gains moderate a little bit, though. You're seeing that in apartments, but the single family rents are still extremely high. And that's only going to get worse as more people are unable to afford to buy a home. What are they going to do? They have to rent, and that pushes demand higher.
Exactly. Diana, for now, thank you very much. Diana Olick with the latest on housing.
Kirk, I think the biggest takeaway here is affordability, right? And that's on a lot of people's minds. So when we're talking about affordable housing, a lot of people are just moving to different states where they can go ahead and actually put a roof over the top of their heads. And now with the way that the work situation is, people are working from home a lot of times, finding some ways online to go ahead and make income for their family. But what say you here in some of these hot markets? What is the time that this thing will go ahead and tip to what we consider affordability?
Yeah, I think affordability is a bigger problem than just the housing market. I think wages just haven't kept up with life in general over the years, so that's a bigger ceiling. I didn't catch what she said the affordability number was. I think it said 24%, and it was down from 32%, if I'm not mistaken. But I wasn't sure if she was talking about debt ratios there or affordability. Generally, though, watch for a number of 17%. When you look historically, when affordability hits 17% nationally, that's usually when markets will flip. And you'll start to see a rising market reverse or a lower market increase. There's that number, 17% affordability. She did say one thing that bothered me when she said 28% is the debt ratio required to qualify for a mortgage. That's completely untrue if I heard her correctly. FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, you're going to be closer to 49 and sometimes even over 50% on your debt ratio, on your back end ratio, which includes housing expenses as well as whatever's on your credit card report, on the FICO score there. So if you're looking at a jumbo loan, you're going to be closer to 35 to 40%. Home equity lines are going to be between 40 and 50% on debt ratio. But I don't know any products in the market right now that have a 24, 28% requirement for debt ratios.
Mark, you're appraising homes and work with a tremendous amount of appraisers all over the state of California. Affordability is a big issue in that state. What do you see as the trend right now? Are still a lot of people leaving California and moving to different places?
Yes, people are still leaving California, but I think at the same rate, people are moving in. So our net migration usually isn't that radical as people would think. But one thing that stuck out to me that she said is that the affordability, 31.5%, is the highest since 2007. 2007, if we look back in our time machine, that was a very prosperous time when we might have seen the top of the market, and then we had the rug pulled out and we had the mortgage meltdown. So if Nostradamus again or Nouriel, Roubini are looking back at their crystal balls and relating these numbers back to 2007, if we are at a point where we're in a 2007 market, it might be time to, pull the plug and sell that place. When they talked at the very end about the difference between purchasing a home and renting a home, in my market, there's a shortage on both sides, and the rents are going up incredibly, but they're still below what it would cost to buy into a home. So the same house that rents for a crazy $4,000 or $5,000 a month is going to cost considerably more when you factor in all of it. So affordability, until the wages rise, I don't think anything's going to change. I don't know that we'll get to 17% until people's incomes increase radically, because it doesn't seem as if the monthly payments are going anywhere. So it might take a while until the rates go down.
You made a good, Mark. I agree with you too. I think that the challenge in the housing market is twofold. Jake, you asked directly, when is affordable housing going to come back? I don't know that it's coming back into the areas where it doesn't exist. I think affordable housing is what you described, which is move to an area where you can afford to live. And that's a tough pill for people to swallow and definitely not preferred. But I think that's what affordable housing looks like these days. And then Mark, you said, the affordability, it's more about down payment is what I see. Because prices have gone up, savings rates are down. That's making it harder to get in. It's not an affordability issue in terms of underwriting a loan. From my perspective, it's more about having that money for the down payment. Even at 3.5% or 3%, that can be tough for some people.
Substantially, especially with prices increasing or at a high and income not following it. And also, we're paying twice as much everywhere we go for our basic needs. So, understood. Paul, your town was in that report as far as over 100% inventory increase.
Yes.
Break down the Raleigh, the Triad area for us, so everybody can get a no BS assessment of what's happening back there.
Absolutely. And I want to comment real quick on what Kirk said. I've sold a lot of homes to local North Carolinians using the NC down payment assistance plan. And that is where North Carolina is giving you $8,000 to help with your down payment. And, for the majority of out-of-state clients, they don't need that program. They don't use that program. For the majority of in-state clients, they need that program. And it concerns me about the affordability of North Carolinians owning a home in North Carolina. New Yorkers can sell and move down here. Floridians can sell and move up here. What about the North Carolinians? And, we're up, as we just saw that clip. Well, I don't see, and, I just did a video on, do I see the market crashing? And I was like, no, I don't see it crashing. And I'm getting some hate on that from other people on my Instagram. But let's just look at the stats real quick. Our median house right now for the triad is $307,000. Okay. Last year for June, it was $225,000. Okay. So we're up. Interest rates are up, but the sales price has continued to escalate. And currently we have 2,082 homes on the market. We haven't had that number in a long time in the triad. Just a few months ago, we're at 1,400 homes. New listings today, there's 29. The day after Independence Day, which every day is Independence Day, but the day after Independence Day, 29 homes on the market, 15 price decrease, 0 price increase, 0. Closed today so far, 13. We'll see what happens after 5. And withdrawn, there was 19 homes withdrawn today. I'm curious to know why they were withdrawn. I really am.
Find out for it. Do a little.
I imagine the withdrawal is probably because they didn't get their price, right?
I'm assuming.
Starting to level off a little bit for a minute.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, that is a big increase. It definitely is, because here 60 days ago was in the low thousands, and now we're over 2,000 in the Raleigh area. So
absolutely. And so she's right. That report was very legit. We have high increase, and they're continuing to build. Builders are continuing to build. They're continuing buying and developing land. You see it all around. Those watching, Burlington, North Carolina, Mebane, North Carolina, Holly Springs, North Carolina. Raleigh is a big city. Okay. So what's happening is people are going into smaller towns, buying huge tracts of farmland. And then developers are beginning to develop these properties as fast as they can to get houses up to sell. And again, Toyota's coming. Toyota, and there's another company, that one hasn't been revealed, and they're going to make the Prius batteries here in between Greensboro. It's Guilford and Randolph County merge, and it's between Greensboro and it's between the Julian Liberty area. And for you guys not looking, if you have a map, you would understand, but it's a rural area which was farmland, and that's what they're doing. That's what's going on.
Paul, what would you say a balanced market? Homes on market in your area, what would be a balanced market in your opinion?
A balanced market is 28 days on the market, and we're at 4 days on the market. And a balanced inventory is 5,000 to 7,000 on the market, and we're at 2,400. 2,000, not even 2,100.
So still a ways to go. Excuse the airplane, guys.
Yeah. I love it. I wish the breeze was hitting me right now.
Well, let's check in with Phoenix real quick and see what the news is saying down there.
Longtime Phoenix residents and new residents were flooding the housing market during the pandemic, pushing demand for homes through the roof. And according to Realtor.com, the supply is finally starting to meet demand. Supply is up 113%.
Fox 10's Marissa Sarback tracking what the data shows us here in Phoenix and what it means now for buyers and sellers. Some of this is starting to flip.
Yeah, finally, John. I think so many people in the Phoenix market have been waiting to hear something like this, because experts have been saying that we have been seeing one of the hottest housing markets in the area for months, which so many of us already know. But experts say we are finally starting to see the beginning of a market equilibrium.
There's no doubt that we are in a market shift.
Most brokers and agents are starting to notice the hot Phoenix housing market shift ever so slightly.
Over the past couple of years, sellers have had a major advantage in the market primarily due to the inventory being really low and interest rates being really great, which was drawing buyers into the market.
Homebuyer Arya Chowdhury can attest.
It took me approximately 11 months to actually close in on my first house, which was November of 2021. And it took so long because every time a house would be listed, I'd be interested. I would even put in an offer, and then it was gone, just disappeared.
But we've seen multiple interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve already this year. The latest, 0.75% in June, the biggest hike since 1994, with an end goal of trying to curb inflation. Mortgage rates are reacting. According to a report from Zillow, mortgage rates across the country are now averaging 5.78%. And a rise in mortgage rates means it's taking some players out of the game, and houses are sitting on the market here in Phoenix a little bit longer.
What has happened is that there are more homes on the market, so now the demand and the supply are starting to balance. And as a balance starts to happen, now buyers and sellers have equal leverage when they're negotiating a deal for a house.
As Arya closes on her second home, she has some advice for anyone else trying to navigate the challenging housing market.
Okay, not just kind of focus into this moment, but what is it going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, and then consider that into planning when you're making such a big purchase.
And we are still expecting a few more rate hikes from the Federal Reserve throughout the rest of this year. The chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, has hinted that there could be one coming up in July that could also be 0.75%, but he also said that something like that will not be common. Live in Phoenix, Marissa Sarbach for Fox 10 News.
Now that sounded like a very wise home buyer. I mean, now you haven't heard many people say when making or planning to purchase, take a look at your 5, 10-year, 15-year plan and plan accordingly. I think that's wise to go ahead and do in this marketplace. What say you, Mark?
Hopefully the people who bought in Phoenix 5, 10 years ago didn't plan on a 400% gain. And to call Phoenix a hot market, if you've ever spent any time there, I don't know when it's not hot. But when you looked at that map from the previous Diana Olick, it's the usual suspects. This happened last time around. Everybody went to Phoenix, to Florida, to Vegas. What goes up must come down. And it seems like when they talk these percentages, we need our man here who questions authority every time. We need Tony Barbarino say, what do these numbers mean? Like Kirk pointed out, 100% increase in inventory. It went up from 3 listings to 6. This is what we're talking about here. Phoenix is a place, like Paul had mentioned, where people in the West who've seen radical appreciation could move out to. I think that a lot of these places got so hyperinflated that they're going to be the first ones to feel the pinch. And like she had mentioned, the Fed is doing their job in slowing down the real estate craziness. But there's other things at play here, like we saw in the very first one. You mentioned about the global economy and everything else. If you can't afford to eat, you're not going to look to increase your mortgage payment.
Sure. So I think most of these statistics are based upon pre-pandemic levels in most cases from some of these reports that I'm seeing. So some of the curves are now gauged against, I would say, mid-2020 type levels right inside there. Early to mid 2020 levels. So that's
anytime we're going to analyze a market, we have to go back into 2019 when the market was more normal, and pre all of this, stimulus and pandemic and this craziness that ensued from, the beginning of 2020 through now.
Yeah, for sure. What say you, Kirk?
Yeah, it's like I said, the pendulum's going to swing the other way. Paul identified in his market, okay, it's up 100%, but it needs to go another 100% before it's going to hit a plateau of stability. We're seeing that in Phoenix. Watch that Case-Shiller report when those come out, because that really will tell you which markets, but Mark, I completely agree with you. Usually San Diego, Phoenix, Vegas. I mean, there's some markets that tip first. So if you're looking for a real decline in real estate, look for those markets first as indicators. But I think in the long run, we're not going to see it. I think that things are going to stabilize and plateau and continue to go up over time.
Paul, you have such a surge of people moving to your area. So now with the population growth, your your pre-pandemic levels of a balanced housing market at a certain inventory level almost seems to me like it would need to be more than the 5,000. Wouldn't you say that?
I would agree. I would agree. I was just thinking, watching that. Well, first of all, my favorite state, if I were to move anywhere, would be Arizona. I love Arizona. It's my favorite state to move to. The only thing, they don't have water, right? But there's like ocean, there's mountains, and then there's desert, and it gets hot, but there's always some mountains. And so I'd like to see inventory increase there, just for maybe the future for me. As far as North Carolina goes, so I remember back in 1997, we were buying a gallon of oysters for a restaurant for $8.50. And they went up. I remember when they jumped to $12.50, and my dad had just lost it. Okay, a gallon. Now they're a minimum of $100 a gallon for a gallon of oysters. If you're not going to pay $150, depending on who you get it from and how many you get, right? Because we go through a lot of oysters. So, and it really makes me think, okay, we're talking about interest rates, we're talking about the market, we're talking about the housing market, the stock market and the housing market. Okay, how are we going to get, I understand everything's going up, but how are we going to get people's salaries to go up so they can continue to function in this? Because I think that's the one thing that's not being addressed here. No, we're addressing it, but the feds, I don't feel, are addressing it. People have to keep up with what's going up, or it's like a wave. That's just my opinion here. But I think this is very important, and it needs to be addressed, because it's going to affect our business, and it's going to affect how we live, and it's going to affect affordability, and it's going to affect possibly a crash.
Well, that's something that Tim talks about all the time, right? As far as how all of this stuff is so interconnected. And we're starting to see whenever we have inflationary issues, obviously there's constraints on small business, medium business, and we see even some large business starting to go ahead and pull back. Everybody kind of tightens up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to go ahead and see. As far as individual household responsibility, now is the time, 2022, no breaks, right? Lace up your boots and work hard to identify ways to possibly bring in some extra revenue. We do see, Kirk, some of the latest reports here, even this morning, consumer purchasing has been dropping at levels that look like 1970s. We're talking just discretionary purchasing, extra purchasing, things like that. So these are all factors that are going to go ahead and come into the marketplace as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of the pieces seem to be moving in lockstep. The 10-year Treasury note was at a high of 3.3 a couple of weeks ago. It's now down to 2.8. Why is that important? It doesn't drive mortgage interest rates, but it is an indicator as we looked at those charts. So spending is coming down, bond yields are coming down, things are getting back into alignment. So hopefully, the way I see it, I think the Fed has done a good job, at least in getting ahead of it quickly, better than some of the other nations around the world, certainly. And hopefully we'll hit that stability point sooner than later, so that, everyone can get back to work and know what they're doing.
Sure. So we don't have a news clip for, let's see here, Mr. Nouriel Roubini, but if you folks that are watching, you can go ahead and look him up online. I urge that you take a look at his recent economic forum in Qatar. It's about a 20 to 30 minute interview that he's doing with some folks over there, talking about how some world markets are reacting to the American markets. But this clip right here from Market Watch is very recent. And he says here that stocks could go ahead and drop 50%. Says Nouriel Roubini argues things will get much worse before they get better. But here's an interesting clip here, right? Dangerously naive view. Most of those who have come late and grudgingly to the hard landing baseline still contend that any recession would be shallow and brief. They argue that today's financial imbalances are not as severe as those in the run-up to the 2008 global financial crisis, and the risk of a recession with a severe debt and financial crisis is therefore low. But this view is dangerously naive. he argues. There's ample reason to believe that the next recession will be marked by a severe stagflationary debt crisis. As a share of global GDP, private and public debt levels are much higher today than in the past, having risen from 200% in 1999 to 350% today. Under these conditions, rapid normalizations of monetary policy, rising interest rates will drive highly leveraged zombie households, companies, financial institutions, and governments into bankruptcy and default. Next crisis will not be like its predecessors. In the 1970s, we had stagflation, but no massive debt crisis because debt levels were low. After 2008, we had a debt crisis followed by low inflation or deflation because the credit crunch had generated a negative demand shock. Today, we face supply shocks in a context of much higher debt levels, implying that we are heading for a combination of 1970s style stagflation and 2008 style debt crisis. That is a stagflationary debt crisis, so says Nouriel Roubini. Now, he's known as the doomsday kind of economist, has been around for quite some time in the U.S. talking about some of these things. And Mark likes to reference him to Nostradamus. However, what say you, Mark?
Well, he's earned his nickname. If what he says is true, then that's pretty scary stuff. So, I mean, obviously these people know what they're talking about. I did tune into part of his 20-minute spiel there, and it's interesting to see what's going on in the other countries. Qatar is facing inflationary increases also, and he had tied some of the economic factors in, but taking it back to the 1970s, I don't know, my Rolodex doesn't go back that far, but all I can say is I hope that he's wrong.
Yep. Kirk, what say you?
Yeah, I think our capitalistic economy is very resilient. I don't know of any stagflationary periods in the United States. I'm sure there have been a couple or a few, but it's not a common event. It's not like, Japan, we've seen stagflation for 35 years. But even in Japan, with 35 years of stagflation, they're surviving, right? They're still producing cars. Toyota's opening up a major place over near Nepal. I mean, so, is the whole economy going to collapse? Or people going to be living in the streets? I find it hard to believe. Or maybe I just don't want to believe it. I don't know.
Understood. Well, there's obviously there's a lot of people working to go ahead and curb this inflation. But it is, Mark, I urge everybody to kind of take a look at some of what the other world forums are talking about, because they're so reactionary to the American changes and modifications that the Fed go ahead and make. One of Qatar's leading financial analysts obviously was talking about the things that they're going to do if America does certain things, cause and effect all across the world. We're so connected. But Paul, what say you? I know a lot of Americans our inflation is direct. Our consumables are direct inflation, right? And we see more than 100% increase in a bucket of oysters for the restaurants, which obviously now food prices are going up and consumers are pulling back on some of their extra spending because we have increases in taxation, insurance. If we have to move, obviously our mortgage is going to be more expensive, things along those lines. But what say you? What are your thoughts as far as what Nouriel has to say?
Yeah, the fact that it could drop 50%, that's a steep. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. If that were to happen, we'd have a massive crisis, I think. As far as affecting the people, I like what Kirk has to say. We saw Japan's economy stagnant, but the people are still living and still moving forward. That one is just, Jake.
It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
It's a mindful. So we have a lot of conflicting reports from one side to another. And we see it all the time, right? Even in the housing market, we see, are we in a housing bubble? No, we're not. Then we have somebody over here saying, yes, we are. I guess we're just going to have to go ahead and find out, right? So use as much basic common sense as we possibly can and make the best decisions we can for our personal families and then those that depend on us, and then just keep charging hard forward. So a lot of the things that we are affected by, ladies and gentlemen, are due to the high cost in oil and gas, right? So everything oil and gas is connected to the products that we purchase and how we transport ourselves to and from work, the decisions that our employers make on increasing or decreasing our wages, laying people off, reducing their workforce, the things that affect them in business and how they pass that along to the consumer. So moving into our final report here, ladies and gentlemen, we don't do this too often. However, Mr. Jeff Bezos, some of you might know him as one of the most wealthy men in the world and runs one of the largest companies, Amazon, which most of you purchase your products and supplies from, right? Contends with President Biden here over the weekend. Obviously, consumers do not like paying $5, $6, $7 a gallon gasoline and whatever the fuel prices are. So all of these things are connected. But our president has recently went ahead and asked, and it looks like blamed, the gas station attendants and gas pumps, or the gas station owners, on price gouging, which I don't know about you guys, but every single gas station, whenever the oil price raises or lowers, or supply goes up, the prices come down. And every single one of the gas stations, everywhere I go, is pretty consistent as far as their increase in price and everything else. So it's connected to a core supply of oil. But let's go ahead and check in and see what's going on. Jeff Bezos did not like at all whatsoever what came from the White House over the weekend.
Record gas prices putting a damper on 4th of July travel. And the president, instead of taking responsibility, has got a brand new target. Gas stations. Biden tweeted, quote, "My message to the companies running gas stations and setting prices at the pump is simple. This is a time of war and global peril. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you're paying for the product, and do it now." Washington Post owner and billionaire businessman Jeff Bezos isn't buying it, though, tweeting, quote, "Ouch, inflation is far too important a problem for the White House to keep making statements like this. It's either straight ahead misdirection or a deep misunderstanding of basic market dynamics." And like always, the White House is coming to Biden's defense because he talks just like everybody else.
I think anybody that knows President Biden knows he's plain spoken, and he tells you exactly what he's thinking, and in terms that everybody can understand. So I think we obviously take great exception at the idea that this is somehow misdirection. The president is speaking honestly with the American people about what he's trying to do to bring the prices down. But he was honest even before the invasion, Mike, about the fact that it would not be cost-free. Certainly not cost-free to President Putin, but it wouldn't be cost-free to the American people to stand up for democracy, just stand up for Ukraine's ability to defend.
Okay, and Bezos may have Biden's back, but I'm sorry, or he may blast Biden, but China, it's China that has Biden's back. China state media tweeted he finally realized that capitalism is all about exploitation. He didn't believe this before. Okay, guys, I don't even know where to start on this one. Everywhere. Okay, so President Biden likes to blame Putin for the gas prices. Now he's blaming the gas station owners. But correct me if I'm wrong. This is a president who, on the campaign trail, said he was going to put the fossil fuel industry out of business. Day one of his presidency, he shut down production of the Keystone XL pipeline. And then he went on to limit permits around the country. So now he wants to blame the gas stations, but doesn't he bear some of this responsibility? Leo, I'll start with you.
Please, thank you. Yes.
Okay. So we're all hearing it. We're all feeling it. But it's interesting. So our president said this is a time of war and global peril. Just went ahead and sent that out. Now, I didn't know that Congress went ahead and declared war. Did you guys?
No.
I didn't get that memo. No.
Okay. And consumer confidence is such a big thing that we talk about regarding the housing market, stock markets. So we're in global peril and we're at war. I didn't know we were specifically at war. So that's quite interesting. Jeff Bezos did not agree at all whatsoever. So what say you, Mr. Mark?
Well, the gasoline prices are highly regulated and taxed by our government agencies. So, and the cost of a barrel of oil is the cost of a barrel of oil, and the cost of refining that is what it is. And I happen to know a friend of mine who owns a gas station, and they're not like what you had described. It's different in different jurisdictions around here, and they're basically told pretty much what range they can price their gas at. And California has very, very high state taxes on top of the federal taxes, so we have an extremely high gasoline price. But and it's not like this guy's getting rich by charging $6.75 a gallon. So I think that might be misdirected. And something tells me that if Jeff Bezos picks a fight with the president of the United States, the next thing you might be buying on Amazon is gasoline.
We shall see. Paul, what's your take on this?
Well, it's like pointing up your finger at my family's business and saying your oysters are too high or your flounder's too high. We're buying raw material at a cost, and then we have to go up and pass the expense to the consumer. And I don't think that, I don't like to get political, but with the restrictions that are put on the refineries, and I know that there have been some that's closed down, what is going to happen? I mean, and just like Mark said, North Carolina has a high gasoline tax. We are pretty high on tax. South Carolina, not so much, a lot less expensive. And they're not getting, the people in the gas stations are not making what they have to make. There's a lot of regulations. And I think I'm not a big fan of Jeff Bezos, but I'm glad he took a stand. I really am.
Kirk, what say you?
It concerns me that the president would say something that seems to be so out of alignment with the way money works in this country. The government gets paid first in all cases, right? So their taxes, state and federal taxes, come off the top. If you go to a grocery store or a gas station, the grocery stores only make like 1 to 3 cents on a dollar profit. Gas stations are probably somewhere close to that. So, just pushing it down to the consumer level, really, the mom and pop shop owner, because most gas stations are franchises, right? And some people own a bunch of them, just like anything else. They make a bigger business out of it. But I think it's a dangerous position when the president starts blaming really consumers for the problems that the government has. Now, to the president's credit, I did hear that he's put more barrels from our reserves into play than any other president in history. I don't know exactly what those numbers are, but so he shut down the Keystone Pipeline, yes, but he went into the 200 years of reserves that we already have. And personally, I think we should be using those reserves. I don't think in 200 years we're going to need gasoline. We're going to have alternative fuel sources by then. So why not use it and drop the prices, over the next 20 years or so?
Understood. So I think right now, to go ahead and make that transition, we have to do it wisely and make sure that it's wise from an economical standpoint and a transitionary standpoint. We can't have any shock to the marketplace. Otherwise, things happen like we talk about, right? So I say that we should increase our supply in the United States of America, and that will help us be stronger and more independent and help our economy go. And obviously we are the leader in things economically around the world, and everybody else would benefit from it. So, all right, good deal. Mr. Mark Buhler, how can people get in touch with you for all things appraisal?
All things appraisal are available here. Email me, Mark, M-A-R-K, at cmpappraisal.com. That's where I'm at.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Mark. Paul, how can people get in touch with you if they need representation out of North Carolina?
Absolutely. You guys can reach out to me directly on my cell phone number. That is 336 area code 963-3684. Or you can email me at Paul, Paul, the number 7 @kw.com.
Outstanding. Thank you, Paul. And Kirk, for all things mortgage, how can people go ahead and get in touch with you, sir?
Yeah, hit me up at kirkjaffe.com, just like my name is spelled, or approvemyloankirk.com. We have resources on there about how to put your own mortgage package together as consumers. Take advantage of the bank instead of them taking advantage of you. 818-469-2189 is the number to reach me at, and call anytime.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll see you guys all on Thursday.
Thanks, Sarge.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was another Real Estate America News edition. We stream live every Tuesday and Thursday at high noon Eastern, 0900 Pacific. Bring your favorite beverage. We always have some hot mainstream news to go ahead and talk about. Enjoy your day after this celebration of independence, and be blessed and unstoppable. We'll see you shortly.